All right, here we are. We're live.
Yeah. Hey! We're trying to move away from the imperial system. So say it properly. 1.5.
Ah.
Yeah. I will say I will get.
Good job making a joke to reference what we talked about before we went live. People are really gonna be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that joke really works now.
For those of you who don't know, Jacob, we were counting down, but Shane was having problems and he was counting down. So Jacob said 1.5, as a little joke. And I said, Jacob, we're trying to move away from the imperial system. So use the proper term, 1.5.
Well, if you have to explain a joke, it stops being funny.
Yeah. I will say, I will give the metric system kudos for that. They don't use fractions, Yeah.
Yeah, so this is going to be, just so everyone knows, this is a hangout for the patrons, of whom they haven't really started showing up yet, but they'll probably be in a little bit. It was really, they're kind of all over the planet, so it was really kind of hit and miss trying to accommodate most of them, but we'll see who comes in. But right now we have Charles Thomas, Chris Hangartner, and Jacob Morris, and it looks like we've got Jay the Magic Robot in the live chat. So
yeah.
No real subject, although we were talking about airsoft guns before in our little pre-show.
I hope the Antifa people didn't get our Patreons. Then again, what are the Antifa people gonna do? Scream?
Probably carry.
They're going to turn over their own trash cans.
Yeah.
They might bring airsoft guns to their next protest.
Yeah. Speaking of which, they did an open carry protest not too long ago, and there was actually a guy, he took a picture of them when they were gathered up, and he took a really close look at the guns they were carrying. He realized that almost all the guns they had were either fakes or they were real guns, but they were not properly assembled, so they wouldn't have worked.
Okay.
Yeah, I posted a comment saying, wow, Antifa, you can't even get an open carry protest correctly. No.
Clearly not gun people.
Yep. To quote Teal Deer, this is what they are in a nutshell. What do we want? We don't know. When do we want it? Now. Yeah. Seriously, we gotta find a way to get Teal Deer on here. That guy's awesome.
Yeah.
We're not a legitimate podcast unless we have a British guy with a funny British accent talking on our show.
We haven't had a British guy on here yet, have we?
We
don't
had
get
that
Sargon on here. He'll derail the whole discussion talk about communism.
Maybe I could get Big Dicko in here. Wonder what he's up to right now.
Yeah. Well, then again, it is 10 o'clock where they are.
11 actually.
Oh yeah.
5 hours ahead.
Yeah. Well, it's 5 p.m. where I live, so.
Oh, okay. So they're 6 hours ahead of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Christian Hodges in the chat room says, if there ever is a shoot-off, at least we know who will win.
Yeah. I actually posted a funny comment on that on a forum where, because it's a gun forum with gun owners, and I jokingly said, yeah, the Antifa people want to start the Second American Civil War. Here's what's going to be in a nutshell. They're all in a POW camp, and they're wondering, I don't get it. We had our guns pointed at you. Why did we lose? And I go, because your safety's still on, so it didn't fire.
Well, pretty much. I do love that. If you by the way, you should check out this dude called Wizard of Cause. Man, I'm trying to get on your podcast, Shane, because he's one of those liberals who are just burnt out, who just was really, who went in March and was a part of all the labor movements and such, and he basically just pretty much is just saying about these Antifa, these people who have never worked, who've never even worked a one real hard day's work in their entire life. These and he gave them nice terms called Comrade Starbucks. It's just these people who just hang out at Starbucks all day saying, you want to be against police, or you want to be against all these other things and such. And I'm like, You know, I have my issue with the police and everything. I think, you know, maybe privatize or something like that. But the way they're talking, they just say, you know, just, everything was just fine. We just get rid of, just have no one there. Just everyone has the honor system and everything be like a Disney movie and such. It's that type of, oh gosh, you're and the same type of preaching, and such. From saying I will fix everything for you, but yet I don't walk with you. I'm not with you. I'm like, I'm with you, but I'm not really with you. You know, I sip my Starbucks coffee with pride with you. Meanwhile, the guy who actually has to work 40 hours a day and doing everything they can, you know, and all that stuff is looked upon as like, you know, well, he's fighting for you. No, you're not. You're not here busting your butt and, you know, getting calluses on your hands. Why should I listen to you? You know, that sort of thing.
So let me clarify something for Darth Vega in the comment. He asks, is this Google Hangout just for patrons? Because I'm not a patron. It just showed up on my YouTube subscriptions. Everyone can watch it, but if you want to come in here and come onto the microphone and join us, you have to be a patron. So that's how it works. There's a special link that I posted to the Patreon page that you can get in.
Yep. Or you have to be a co-host.
Yep.
Or a co-host. I always invite the co-hosts because, you know, they're good enough to do all that for free. It's not like I pay them. So, I mean, I figure I can give them, you know, a lot of the same benefits. So
we're semi-reliable.
Yep. Oh, and Charles, going back to your whole comment about the police, there's a really good comment I got from a guy who's libertarian, and he says, contrary to popular belief, libertarians are not against the police. We're just against the government holding a monopoly on the police.
I agree.
But I really think that, you know, if we had the right to keep and bear arms and people respected and practiced it, there wouldn't be that much of a need for the police. And if we go back to the Wild West, which wasn't really that wild, if you look back at, you know, a lot of the shootouts and anything, the trouble that was caused, most of it was caused by lawmen trying to come in and, you know, enforce their own way on people.
Yeah, well, the thing is, you know, I mean, it's like, and, you know, even back in the Wild West, you know, I mean, a lot of people like to say, but without, you know, colleges and the government and all that, you know, how are we going to have an effective police department? Back in the Wild West, what they did was that they found a guy. Does he know the basic law of the town? Yep. Is he a good shot? Yep. Is he pretty tough and somewhat charismatic? Yep. Okay, he's the deputy. You know,
yeah, but I was thinking more like when a federal marshal or something would come rolling in.
Yeah. In fact, yeah. You know, I mean, contrary to what a lot of Wild West movies like to portray, you know, where the local law enforcement is crooked and corrupt, and that federal guy fixes everything. In real life, it was the exact opposite.
Yep.
Yeah. It was the feds coming.
Wyatt Earp was not a hero in real life.
Yeah. Wyatt Earp even admitted he wasn't a hero. You know, I mean, he stated in his book, you know, he said, look, I'm not this vicious killer that my enemies like to portray me, but at the same time, I'm not this heroic guy who is fighting crime, you know. I think he once said, like, in his personal diaries about the OK Corral, he said it was a stupid incident that never should have happened.
Made for a great movie, though.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that his brother, I think it was Virgil, didn't want violence. He wanted it to be peaceful. The problem was that White insisted on bringing his friend Doc Holliday with them, and Holliday was known to be quite an aggressive guy.
Arguably, the whole thing would not have happened if it weren't for Doc Holliday, because it was Doc Holliday threatening, I think it was Ike Clanton, that made Ike Clanton want to go and get a gun, and then Holliday went to Earp and got Earp to pass gun control, and then it all spiraled from there.
Yeah. From what the story goes, is what happened is that when they were arriving at the OK Corral, Virgil Earp said, look, guys, okay, let's just, look, you broke a couple of laws here. Let's just come with us quietly. We'll figure it all out peacefully. And then what happened was that one of the guys said, fine, we will, you know, and he was complying, but he said it in an aggressive tone. Doc Holliday ended up cocking his shotgun. The guy, one of the bandits, said, holy shit, they're gonna open fire on us. Virgil tried to intervene, but Doc picked up the shotgun and aimed it at them, and that's how the firefight started.
They didn't even have their guns on them. They had to reach over into the saddlebag for them.
Yeah, you know, and they responded because they thought Doc Holliday was going to take the double-barrel shotgun and pump them full of lead, you know. You know, it just reminded
the first shot.
Yeah,
thanks for ruining my favorite character.
Yeah, it's just, yeah. Well, we need to remember Hollywood often fictionalizes a lot of people, you know.
Yeah, basically what you know about them is pretty much fiction, and really a lot of the reason why we know some of the things I just said is because, a few years ago they used modern forensic techniques to kind of go back and deduce, who of all these different contradictory stories, who was more likely telling the truth about this and that, things like that.
Yeah, because there was bad people, like, Jesse James and Billy the Kid, they were bad people, but the law wasn't any better.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and there weren't really enough of them to make it out like it was this, big time. I mean, you've got a handful of people, but, it's like I said, I think it was in How to Argue for Gun Control, like in Aberdeen, one person gets murdered in Aberdeen, and that it's such a small population that it shoots the murder rate up to like 200, 100,000 or something ridiculous like that.
Yep. Speaking of which, I love that video you and Hoodie Demon did where that one guy, tried to say all these people that say the Second Amendment guarantees them didn't read it. And it says a well-regulated militia. It's like, so therefore only a recognized militia can own guns. And I'm like, where does it say in the Constitution that it has to be recognized?
Yeah. And he put in the spurious commas. So that's.
Yep.
It's amazing how people will cling towards, say, governments and such. And yet, it seems like more often than not, most of the problems of the world does stem from, governments and such. It's interesting.
Amazing how people cling to have a complete sentence.
It's one thing I really hate is when people, because, we like to quote historical figures all the time. I can't tell you how many leftists I've met who love to quote Thomas Jefferson, and the quotes and the things that they quote him as saying, either he never said or they were quotes taken out of context.
I could imagine.
Yep.
With respect, there have been libertarians that have done that. In fact, Penn and Teller had one in Bullshit that wasn't a Jefferson quote. I think it was the one about government big enough to give you everything you need is big enough to take away everything you have. That was Gerald Ford, not Thomas Jefferson.
Oh, yeah. I love that thing there. And it was basically talking about, funny enough, about language, believe it or not, how the FCC wanted to go after cable and stuff like that. But, that was actually, to me, really is the whole...
Yeah, that's a really good quote, too, because one thing that really grinds my gears with a lot of those people that want the government to have all this control is they like to say, but look at us right now. We've got democracy. We've got a government that cares for us. And I just want to say, look, even if that is true, that's the current government. What about the next government?
Well, and that's the thing. This is what I'm hearing from a lot of people, because net neutrality is now a big thing, again, because, the FCC is backing off on that. And people are saying, well, if we need net neutrality, then it'll be like this and it'll be fine. It's like, okay, well, that's how you're imagining it. That's how it might be for a little while.
Yeah.
But once government has its foot in the door on regulating the internet, what's it going to look like, 10 years from now?
Yeah, that's actually exactly what happened when they first started regulating the internet. When it first came out, they actually said, okay, we're not going to spy on anybody. We're only going to be looking for child pornographers, molesters, or people who are trying to stalk over the internet. And for a little while, that's only what they did. But eventually, the FBI realized, hey, we can do a lot of other stuff on here. And that's when you get the whole, FBI trying to hack people's accounts issue.
Or putting malware on your computer to try and get the...
Yeah, but, in some cases, like, for example, for them trying to kick a, the child molesting website they took over, right? And part of me is like, I know the problems with that, but, I want, because there are websites like that out there, and they're horrible people that do these type of things, but I'm probably like
you're cutting out.
Me? I
think it's because Alex came in and there's something playing in the background. Alex, whatever.
Sorry about
to put it down.
Cell phone. Done.
Alex Fobble, everyone.
Hello, Alex.
Hello,
but you know what I'm saying, though, right? If they're using it just to capture, child molesters and stuff like that, or those things, like it's a sting operation, I have no issue with that, though.
There was a great episode of Babylon 5 back in the first season, and I love that I can talk about Babylon 5 and actually tell you where to see it now, because you can go to go90.com and watch the whole thing for free. But there's
also check out Greater Creators on Go90. Good show.
Oh yeah. There's good stuff there. This episode is where this guy from the government is getting Commander Sinclair to do his bidding and taking the military in against these protesters, and what the law says is that the commander gets to use any means necessary to put down the protesters. And so he finally stands up there at the end and he says, "Now I am authorized to use any means necessary to put down this protest. Am I right?" And the guy from the Earth government's like, yes, that's absolutely right. I have your full support in this. He says, yes, I have your full support. Okay, then I choose these means necessary. And he just basically gives the protesters everything they want because what they were asking for was completely reasonable. And the guy from the government looks at it, and then Sinclair just looks at him and says, "Never hand someone a gun unless you're sure where they'll point it."
I should really go watch Babylon 5 now.
Yes, but
I better Babylon 5 or Star Trek. What was it?
Too bad.
Deep Space Nine is better.
Yeah. It's pretty funny because a lot of people hate Deep Space Nine, and I think I know why. It's because Deep Space Nine is one of the first in the series that actually kind of questions, the lore of Star Trek, by saying, I think this whole Galactic Federation where there's no money and all that, I think it's not as good as people think it would be.
And I still say with Deep Space Nine, watch the pilots, suffer through the pilots so you can know what's going on. Then skip to season 4 because it's really good.
Season 2 and 3 are decent. There's some good stuff there.
You want to go through, look for the fan favorite episodes in those first few seasons because there are some good ones. But as far as regularly doing it, watch those.
Oh yeah, but I love how Matt Pat from Game and Film Theory, how he actually did a whole video about the Federation, and more or less he said when you actually break it down, the Federation is much more fascist in nature than you think it is, and the comic was so full of left wing sci-fi writers saying no, the Federation can't be fascist because of this and that, and Matt Pat pointed out that the Federation practices almost all the forms of fascism. It may not be exactly as aggressive as, that, but it is. By the way, I love when people...
Yeah, but all you have to do to get them to leave you alone is pretend you never traveled faster than the speed of light, right?
Yeah. And I just love how, believe it or not, a lot of communists use this argument, but the whole argument about Star Trek and how their society without money and all that works is because technology. It's like
it doesn't work.
Well, really, that I think was just kind of like a game of telephone or something, because until that point it was pretty much clear that the only thing you were looking at was the military. And of course the military is going to work like that. But even so, there were things like in the original series, Kirk would say, "Scotty, you earned your pay for the day." And even in, I think, Encounter at Farpoint, Dr. Crusher says, "Charge this to my account on the Enterprise."
Oh yeah, it's that type of stuff. But the one thing when you look at these type of shows is you have to know the care. They actually they took chances. It took risk. In fact, I think when you look at those shows, and they get more appreciative and such. Heck, even TNG took. After the first couple seasons are, to say they're bad is that's an understatement.
Third season is when it really got going.
Yes, there are some good ones, but honestly, oh boy, you try watching some of them. It comes off bad.
I'm going to say hello to George because this is a patron hangout. We have our first patron here. I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name, but welcome, George. And we also have Evan in the chat room. But George is the first one in the live chat, so welcome.
Hey, howdy, fellas. How you doing? I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Oh, I can hear you.
Yep.
Rock and roll. I set it up.
Look, talking over us.
The challenge is going to be getting in a word edgewise in this.
Yeah, because no problem. Because unfortunately, though, some of us, and I'm guilty of it a lot myself, don't know when to stop talking.
Same here, but
I have a mute button. Don't worry.
I'm curb myself, and I'm trying to save most of my energy to my podcast later tonight. Cheap plug, but one thing I honestly I do talk about previous stuff podcasts about is trademark law, copyright stuff. It's interesting about how some developers, these people are like, oh well, we can't really do anything about copyright law. It's like it's too big or anything. For example, the last thing I talked about is Bethesda. Bethesda saying in this whole type of we can't stop using Prey or anything else. We can't do that. You know why? Because that's the law. I'm like, seriously?
Potatoes.
Yes.
Although the new Prey game is actually really good.
I heard some mixed things, but the reason why I'm not going to buy anything from Bethesda anytime soon is because they basically stopped the indie studio from basically using Prey in their game because reasons. Because
the name Prey.
Are you talking about copyright? Yeah, because I have a friend, who's mostly on my side when it comes to politics and all that, but now to be fair, he's an artist, so I can understand why it's tougher for him, but whenever I bring up the subject of copyright or publishing, he just really says, but we need some copyright.
Yeah, I've got a leftist friend who's pretty much the same way. Well, he's kind of an ex-leftist now because he's kind of coming center a little, and I say center in the vertical sense, horizontal plane.
Like he always keeps on saying, well, without copyright, what's going to stop people from stealing our stuff and we can't make money?
Stealing, yeah, they don't quite get it yet.
Yeah, and here's the thing, I actually told them because this actually has happened in the past. Copyright laws aren't as reliable as people think they are because, think about it. You could be writing up this novel and it's a really good idea. I come across it, I take a sample, and I finish it before you do, and I file the copyright. So even though you're the original creator, because I filed the copyright first, technically, by a legal standpoint, I'm the sole creator.
And Durakan in the chat room makes a good point. Copyright and trademark law has been completely flipped to attack creators and make publishers rich. And I mean, when they're saying like, oh, when you're pirating music, you're taking money away from the artist. No, you're not. You're taking money away from the labels. The artist doesn't see crap from those sales. They have to go do live shows to get paid.
Yeah, I actually read that. Contrary to what some people like South Park like to somewhat portray it as, most celebrities, they get their money from concerts or live appearances on TV shows and all that. The records, the CDs, and all that, almost all of that money, it goes to the record company.
Well, even a lot of those live appearances are promotional for the album or whatever it is. They have to do it under their contract, and they don't get paid for it.
Well, yeah, and now with the internet and seeing how it is, you gotta sit there and wonder, why people are still signing these big labels. People are like, I can release this stuff by myself. I could do all the stuff. Get hits on my own and start my own record labels and such.
Jonathan Colton.
Oh yeah, it's same thing. I think Jim Sterling talked about this, and I know, but he talked about this when there was Sopa and Pippo's on there, and I actually watched an old video of that, and it said it's basically they convince the record labels. And video game companies and everything else. The reason why they do this is because they just got in the door for us. They convince so many people the only way to get to heaven and get their money and everything else is go through them, which is complete BS. And the more things you can have more, and heck, Kickstarter, for example, how many games and good games have been released via Kickstarter? I mean, for
1, 2, 3.
4, 5. I mean, you have Undertale. You have, I haven't seen Divinity. I had like Bloodstained, and that looks gonna be decent. I heard some mixed stuff about Yooka-Laylee, which is some people say it's good, some say it's not. My number 9 is garbage, but
Mighty Number 9 had potential, but it got wrecked or something.
Well,
Floofy Coon says that you should definitely buy the new Doom from ID Software. Actually, when I got my new video card earlier this year, I got Doom for free. I haven't had a chance to play on it yet, but
you should. It's great.
Doom,
I have the demo.
The original Gamergate. Yeah. After Columbine, everyone was saying, "Oh my God, Doom makes people want to kill people."
No.
Yeah.
I made a decree on my podcast to never buy anything Bethesda produced or anything else. So if I wanted to buy Doom, I can't. I don't want to be like one of those people.
According to Floofy Coon, Doom is from ID Software, apparently, not Bethesda.
I think Bethesda only publishes it. So
I made a statement and I have to stick with it. I must be a man of my word until this whole copyright stuff.
Well, I don't buy Bethesda develop games that they develop in-house because they suck. now.
Yeah, I know what you're on, Charles. Ever since I saw The Force Awakens, I've been protesting any Disney Star Wars product.
Yeah,
I did see Rogue One. I did see Rogue One via I don't know not cable. It was a website. It was a website that leaks movies on there, and you can watch them for free. I watched it there, and it's pretty funny because everyone kept telling me, "Well, yeah, Force Awakens sucked, but you got to watch Rogue One. It's better." Nope. Boring.
No, it's not.
Boring.
There was some good stuff. The space battle was fun. I have to say, there was a good space battle. The Y-Wings.
And Darth Vader.
Yes.
Well, that's the only
one. No. So Darth Vader was the worst part, where he's like, "Don't choke on your aspirations."
No, I'm talking about that. I'm talking about that at the end.
He didn't sound as intimidating. You know, it's like you could kind of tell through the dialogue itself that James Earl Jones is like, "Oh my God, people, I'm in my 80s. Can't you get another guy to do this role?"
I was talking about the Darth Vader scene at the end of the movie.
Yes, that was nice, but the space battle was great. And I love seeing the Y-Wings getting all that action and love. Yeah. We haven't seen that in any Star Wars, like I think in the big movies. I've never seen the Y-Wings.
Also, Charles, there's also a major plot hole in Rogue One. See, in Rogue One, spoiler alerts for anyone who hasn't seen it, they actually are firing the Death Star. They're using it on low power to destroy, parts of planets, to fight the rebels. Yet in the original New Hope, there's a scene where they're talking in a council room, and the dialogue makes it pretty clear that up until they blow up Alderaan, the Death Star is not operational. It can't be used in combat yet.
Yeah, Alderaan was basically a demonstration of, hey, look at what we can do.
Yeah, that's another thing that I hate about Rogue One and why I don't like the canon is that when you think about it, Rogue One kind of ruins the Death Star to begin with. We saw the Death Star, but we didn't know it was capable. And when it blows up Alderaan, it's like, holy shit,
And yet people still want to build it. That's how this powerful weapon. In fact, that was one of the first big things when wasn't that the White House answered? Someone actually said, "Why don't we build the Death Star or something?"
How would you not know what it was capable of? I mean,
there actually was an accountant who estimated with our current technology, that how much it would cost us to build an actual Death Star. I think it was $106 billion.
Well, so just a small loan.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of energy to actually blow up a planet when you think about the mass of the things. Yeah, I think Phil Plate actually did a calculation on that once.
You have to be at least Frieza or Goku to do that.
No, scratch that. I mean, Vegeta blew up a planet when he was just going to
well, that was filler.
Yeah,
and he did have different hair.
Go supernova and don't blow up their planets. I mean, come on.
Have you seen Vegeta's hair?
Yeah, yeah, and actually, Shane, I actually saw another funny, hilarious science joke about the Force Awakens. Where they're using Starkiller Base and they use it to blow up the planet, and then suddenly one guy's like, "Wait a minute, Hux. If we just destroyed the planet we're orbiting, what's keeping us in orbit?" Oh shit! And then their planet starts rocketing like an asteroid, and everyone's falling back forward because.
Okay, never mind that.
Yeah.
How does the lasers reach the other planets in any time soon at the speed of light?
Yeah, I know. I like how one person pointed out. That's another thing too. It's like let's say the system that Starkiller Base blew up was let's say 5 light years away from the planet you're on. You wouldn't see the explosion for 5 years.
Yeah, that could give you plenty of time to escape.
Yeah,
they're in a puniverse.
Yeah, that makes sense actually.
It's like if you remember that cheese eater of the Star Trek movie Generations when he shoots the missile off of the sun and it just goes right up there and then and it's like no,
it's magic.
No.
Yeah.
Don't let physics ruin a good plot for you.
Now, what bugs me the most is
maybe the
when
missile had a warp bubble around it.
Spacecraft.
That's the problem. It wasn't a good plot.
Yeah.
The physics thing that bugs me the most is when they show a spacecraft approaching the planet and they're firing their engines toward the planet so that they're accelerating further instead of slowing down and dropping into an orbit.
Yeah, it's like, let's accelerate and let the planet's gravity destroy us.
But I mean, I can forgive that if everything else, is good, because Gravity is an incredibly good movie if you haven't seen it.
Oh, yeah.
And the science is actually pretty good. The orbital mechanics is completely embarrassingly wrong. But if they had tried to do it the proper way, it would have been just confusing and no one would have understood what's going on. Because people who actually do calculations with orbital mechanics say, yeah, I don't really understand it. I just know the math works.
Well, even just people who play Kerbal Space Program.
But yeah, we've come a very long way from observing space and all that,
Yeah, if you want to slow down in orbit, you have to speed up.
Yeah. Hey Shane,
because speeding up takes you in a higher orbit, which has a longer period.
Speaking of which, Shane, I have to ask you something. You're more into the science thing than me. What's your opinion on the proposed host hypothesis that eventually the universe is going to die out completely, like the heat death?
Well, there's a couple different things. Heat death, it sounds like you're talking about thermodynamics, and I mean, that's pretty much going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the thing about that, is that means that someday everything will be okay. 0 Kelvin.
Yes.
So, relatively.
Oh, that's what you mean by heat.
So why don't you just pick up?
It'll be a uniform temperature. It'll actually be a little bit above 0 Kelvin, but it'll be a uniform temperature.
Yeah,
this means this universe, right? You mean this universe, not like the entire, because space is big, right?
Well, that's just a theory they're proposing. Like, the biggest problem is that with thermodynamics is that it does say that it's got to be an enclosed space, and we're still learning. Like, we don't know like if we're the sole universe or how big the universe is. We're just not sure.
We can always
but even if there is another universe, if they're thermodynamically isolated, then we still have heat death.
Yeah.
But that's like billions and billions away, right? Like when the sun is
finally about 100 trillion years from now.
Entropy.
Yeah.
Plenty of time to get into a portal gun.
Not to mention, I like how one person. I actually saw a funny parody about a Doctor Who episode where they go to that area where there's supposed to be a heat death, but they find out that the universe is perfectly stable, and he finally asks them, "But where's the heat death?" And they pointed out, "Well, you see, we've developed it turns out civilization has advanced so technologically that they actually figure out a way to somewhat work around. So, I mean, the heat death still occurs, but they find a way.
They created E-space to kind of buy some time.
Yeah.
And so there you have kind of like an extra little universe that's popped off of ours that's absorbing the extra entropy.
Yeah.
Well, let's see.
But that's why it's one thing, because I keep hearing people talk about like the Doctor Who episode with the biggest body count is this one, or maybe like this latest one because this many number of people die. It's like people. Logopolis, dozens of planets, maybe even hundreds, were wiped out by the entropy waves. So yeah, that's got to be the biggest body count.
Exterminate,
including all of Kraken.
Like I said, the thing is that I tell this to people all the time, and many scientists have actually said this. With that, there was one scientist who flat out said this with the whole heat death theory. Is that while there's a good chance it's going to happen, the truth is at the end of the day, our perception of the universe and our science is changing all the time. I mean, hey, 20 years ago, science, it was usually, for the most part, universally accepted by science that black holes were these giant vacuums in outer space, but now recent technology shows they're not like that.
Here's what I think is going to happen.
You still got contradictory theories from relativity and quantum mechanics that have to be worked out.
Don't even bring up gender.
Yeah.
Quantum
mechanics, a branch of science, a science that's so confusing, even the so-called expert in the fields can't agree what it is.
Here's what I think is going to happen. So, assuming that the rate of expansion doesn't exponentially increase, because then nothing will happen, but eventually all the matter in the universe should decay into electromagnetic and gravitational waves, which is really interesting because the birth of our universe was electromagnetic and gravitational waves. The only difference is the scale, but what is scale in the absence of matter?
Well, Roger Penrose has an interesting theory. If you do have that exponential dark energy, what's going to happen is, a certain, amount of time from now, the galaxies will be receding so fast from us, they'll be faster than the speed of light and you can't see them. And then that will happen with individual stars, and you'll just be an isolated solar system. And then the planets will get ripped from their suns like that, and it'll just be a planet and we all freeze to death. And then the planets get ripped apart, and then the molecules get ripped apart, and then the atoms get ripped apart. And what you're left with is just elementary particles with all of the other particles whizzing away faster than the speed of light. So those particles are completely isolated. Penrose's idea is that there is no mathematical difference between an isolated particle like that and a universe of zero size. And the math tells us that if we have a universe of zero size, you get a Big Bang. So if that's the case, our universe might end in 10 to the 80 Big Bangs and all these other universes.
That's another misconception that I have heard from people that think about the heat death. It's like, so everything's just going to go black and that's it? And one side says, no, it's just that, I mean, there's a good, and as that guy said, there's a pretty good chance that, a few billion years after the so-called heat death occurs, there's going to be another Big Bang and the whole process is going to start all over again.
Isn't it something like as you apply more energy into a particle as it's traveling near the speed of light, it gains in mass, or something like that?
Yeah, its mass becomes
so. If
infinite.
That's the case, then if you have particles traveling in a shell, let's say, a nearly infinite distance away from you, getting accelerated continuously, wouldn't it turn into a shell of infinite density? Each particle would gain infinite density.
They're not actually accelerating. The space between the particles is increasing.
Yeah. Actually,
so dark energy wouldn't be then applying more acceleration to them. Yeah. But if it is in fact exponential acceleration, I don't know if I buy the whole dark energy thing.
Exponential acceleration or not. Roger Penrose's idea is if it is exponential acceleration and all the particles in the universe become isolated.
Yeah, actually, Shane, I actually once developed a villain, a sci-fi villain who, basically his grand plan, I'm pretty sure there's been a Doctor Who villain that's thought of it, where basically his grand plan is that what he wants to do is that he wants to bring, the heat death, of the universe right then and now, and then he's going to use all that energy from the heat death to relaunch a second Big Bang, but survive it. And basically what he's going to do is he's going to rebuild the entire universe in his own image and basically become a living immortal god.
The Master did. The Master tried that.
Yeah, I believe that. Yeah,
it's kind of like that too. Or at least the surviving the heat death Big Bang part.
Sounds a little restaurant at the end of the universe ish.
Yeah, that's his whole mission. His whole mission is that he discovers this gem that grants uncontrollable power, and he even has the ability to, and basically he has the ability to. It gives him the minor ability to manipulate, the matter and energy around him. And he figures out that he can increase the heat death of the universe right now and rebuild the Big Bang. The only problem is that he won't survive the process. So what he wants to do is he needs to figure out a way to make himself immortal so he can survive and basically live on basically forever to see his new universal empire.
But I mean, it's a big science fiction idea about one day either finding another universe or making our own universe and then escaping to it before the heat death.
Oh, yeah.
So according to...
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. According to Roger Penrose, the universe dies with the birth of new universes. And if the expansion isn't exponential, according to me, the universe dies with the creation of another universe. Huh. That's interesting.
So the whole shebang just keeps on going.
It keeps going. Exactly. The time that doesn't end. And here's something interesting.
Never ends.
But, with all these things, what about like parallel universes or parallel, other dimensions and such, Like
Nobody knows.
The little different things of for example, like say, let me put my camera up here. This little thing, if I decide to say, what would happen if in one reality I don't catch this, or what if I just don't do this at all, or reality that I don't use a camera or anything else. Those things. I always like those type of stories and such. The what ifs and.
There is a theory like that. If I recall correctly, there is a theory of that in quantum mechanics, and like
many worlds theory.
Yeah, there's some evidence to prove it. The only problem is that the only evidence that we can prove that it might happen is that it might occur like on a very small subatomic level. We just don't know for sure like if it can get like to our level,
Yeah, you're talking about elementary particles, but this is interesting because but mostly with quantum mechanics you have the Copenhagen interpretation, which is where you observe a particle and then you have waveform collapse and it goes from being in two or more possible states into just one, and then you have.
Don't even get me started on. Sorry, Shane. I'll let you finish.
And then you have many worlds, which is where, okay, it's creating two different universes. By the time you're able to observe it, before then they were sharing the same probability space, and by that time they've diverged into two separate universes. And the interesting thing is, the Copenhagen people accuse the many worlds people of violating Occam's razor because they have to bring in all these other universes. And I think that's a misunderstanding. They're not bringing in these other universes. They're a natural consequence. But what I see the Copenhagen people as doing is bringing in this waveform collapse thing, which they have no reason to think why that might happen other than there's just one and only universe. I think that's the one that violates Occam's razor.
And that's why Schrodinger's cat was developed.
Yep.
Yes, Schrodinger's cat, live or dead.
Yeah, showing the absurdity of it. And really the thing that gets me is in the double slit experiment. Because when you observe one of the particles, it only goes through one of the slits instead of going through both when it's unobserved. But the thing is, that's still the case if you observe it even after it's gone through the two slits.
There's some waveguide theory
that I was reading about. So what? The waveform collapse travels backwards in time? How does that work?
It might be something to do with waveguides. There's I'll have to find an article and send it to you. I'll look for it.
Yeah, I mean, I've read some things like that, but it all just seems like an ad hoc explanation to just avoid multiple universes.
Yeah. Man, isn't science fun? Oh, Bill Nye, why did you have to sell your soul to the political left?
And I feel bad. As someone who had Netflix, I didn't even look at it because it's just, it's just basically trying to have it's style over substance, which sadly what the left is, and they enjoy.
I was actually going to watch it until I saw Armored Skeptic's review of it, and I was like, okay, well,
I must object. There is no style to it either. It's pretty awful.
Yeah,
but that's what it is for nowadays, and most left stuff. So even though stuff I do like, say Last Week Tonight, even though he brings some ideas into like civil forfeiture and all these other issues that most major stuff, there's still that, style over substance type of thing. There's nothing really, there's no meat. But then again, but then again, it's up to us, the people who actually should be doing is, rather than looking up and say cat videos and such like that, is the internet right itself. There's like where the meat of the issues and the articles and everything else that are supposed to be there. But most people don't read them or look at them, or don't even do basic research. And leading it back to more governments and everything else, people say that the NRA never supported any gun control. That's not true. The first time they ever supported gun control was the Mulford Act back in California. And the reason why they supported that is because the Black Panther Party were, basically doing their constitutional right, having guns and holding their guns around. And, most people didn't like that because, only the white people should only have the guns and such. And then, they probably, they wanted, and it was Governor Reagan at the time who supported it. So, it's stuff like that.
They identified
well,
as
and
white.
I think they've always taken the position of, well, we don't need to pass more gun control legislation. We need to enforce the ones we have now.
Yeah. That's why I actually personally prefer the Gun Owners of America because their own logo says it. Yeah, because their own logo says this. We don't take any negotiation. It's full-blown Second Amendment or nothing.
Yeah, and really the NRA is just a shill for the Republicans because there have been plenty of times that they've supported a Republican candidate that has just been the biggest gun control person ever, like unbelievable, when there's been a libertarian running on a full Second Amendment platform, but the NRA supports Republican and Gun Owners of America supports libertarian.
Yeah, actually, it's funny because there was a forum one time on the subject of guns, and some people were asking the classic question, well, what would the founding fathers think? And I totally told people, I think if the founding fathers would see today, they'd be disgusted, not by all these semi-automatic weapons, but because the government has tanks, they've got bombers, they've got missile launchers, and they want to know, okay, how come you guys have all these tanks, weapons, and all that, and the civilians aren't allowed to have them? That's what they'd be like.
Their idea was that if you had to go to war, the civilians came out with not only their muskets, but their cannons and everything else, and all the they would call heavy artillery.
That's actually another thing that people forget. People love to say, but the Second Amendment only applies to muskets. Well, no, because it doesn't say that. But also, there was an actual case where there was a merchant ship who was traveling through pirate-infested waters, and he wanted to bring aboard cannons on his ship to defend himself. And it wasn't a Navy ship; it was just a civilian ship. And they asked the government, am I allowed to do this? Can I put cannons on my ship? And I think it was James Madison who said, yep, that is perfectly within your constitutional right. Anything you can to defend your property from the pirates, you're allowed to use.
Yeah, and I like saying this is like, if the Second Amendment only applies to muskets, then the First Amendment freedom of speech only applies to soapboxes, and freedom of the press only applies to movable type machines.
Yep.
Believe it or not,
can I just say this something real quickly, Alex? I actually saw a member of The View, I think it was Whoopi Goldberg, who actually used that as an argument for why the government needs to censor the internet because
Wild Blastoise appears.
Yeah, because here's the thing, back in those days, it was much easier to criticize people for what they did, but now with the internet, everyone hides behind anonymity, they can do whatever they want. And I'm just like, Whoopi, you are so ignorant on that,
Oh.
Yeah, my favorite argument, usually gun control comes up in my day-to-day life when somebody mentions about how scary it is that somebody else is carrying a gun. So I usually just turn to them and say, well, I'm scared when I know that nobody's carrying a gun.
Yeah.
My fear is just as valid as yours.
Yeah, I mean, in 2006.
Yeah, if no one in the McDonald's is carrying a gun, then any nut can just come in and start shooting people up.
Yeah.
Blastoise,
it was kind of a dark comedy skit. It was basically a dark comedy where a school enforces a gun-free zone, and they have all these new security protocols, and they guarantee that it'll prevent a mass shooting. A random guy walks by, he sees the gun-free zone sign, he's like, oh yeah, score! He drives back, then he comes back, and he's got a Kalashnikov with a drum magazine, and he's wired with explosives, and then you hear explosives and gunshots in the background.
Wasn't there a base in New Jersey where somebody went crazy with a weapon and wound up shooting up a whole bunch of people, and nobody on the base had any weapons on hand? They had to go to the armory to get them because base regulation says you can't.
That Navy base, that crazy guy,
Well, the problem was Bill Clinton had passed a law saying that soldiers cannot be armed on their own bases. They have to have their weapons put away and ammo stored separately, and the only people who are on the base that can be armed is the military police, and of course, just like the regular police, when seconds count, they're only minutes away.
Yeah, I've actually heard from a couple of friends of mine, who were in the military. That's actually why we hear all these reports of, Afghan rebels and all that, just surprising, well-armed and properly trained troops, because the truth is, as I pointed out, the regulation is that the guns, unless you're a member of the military police or you have special permission, they got to be locked up and ammo stored separately. So when you have these Afghan fighters, they're already loaded and all that. What are you going to fight with?
Yeah, down here when the Aurora shooting happened, the news, and rightfully did praise the police for their quick response time. It was only like a few minutes or very quick, but in that time he still killed, how was it, 70 or so people?
Yeah, the military case has really got to be one of the best arguments against regulation, because you're talking about an environment where you've got trained personnel who are, arguably, supposed to be some of the most reliable and best and patriotic persons. And if it can happen there in that scenario, then who's to say it can't happen anywhere else? So I mean, you can't say, oh well, we can regulate away gun violence. It's just not possible.
Well, you can say the same thing about the 9/11 attacks, because think about how quickly those would have been over if the pilots had been armed. And most pilots are former military. They know how to handle firearms. If you can't trust your pilot with a firearm, how are you going to trust him with this big tin can that you're in barreling through at a high altitude?
It should be up to the airlines, but all they have to do is put a baseball bat at the end of every seat row. You can't really take down an aircraft with a baseball bat, to my knowledge.
And I think the simplest
problem solved.
You say that, and someone's going to do it.
What if the pilots
and the TSA won't stop them?
What if the pilots had to enter through an outside door that was so it's the pilot's cabin is disconnected from the passenger cabin?
Sure, and in the free market, we'll come up with all of these ideas if given the chance.
Well, they say that's the things that have protected us since the 9/11 attacks. The cockpit doors are secure and passengers are on the alert.
Yep.
It's interesting when you when you notice these type of issues. But yet when the government gets involved, though, like say for example the TSA, which fail how many they can't track how many weapons they miss, like 95-98% of them, and yet it's still there, it's still used, which shows you what type of the government, when they really, and people say, oh well, the people on Twitter, and I love them, some people I follow on Twitter, they're just like, my gosh, man, they are just so ignorant in some of these things, and I'm like, I sit there, they're like, well, go fire. Well, if this is why we need to say, for example, government fire, like how government-based firehouses, but let's say, and someone actually responds and basically beats them, like tells them about it, and yet they don't get any response back. They just sit there, forgotten about in the thread, even though they basically point out that it's volunteers. The volunteer firefighters are the most proficient at it than just just government people and everything.
By the way,
I want to address something that Durakan is saying in the chat room, like restrict nuclear because it's an environmental risk, and restrict chemical warfare stuff unless you can prove you have the proper containment. I don't even think you go that far, because nuclear, chemical, biological, and even conventional bombs, those are indiscriminate weapons. They kill a whole bunch of people. They can't be targeted against aggressors. So the only way you can possibly use them is in an aggressive manner, unlike a machine gun, which you can use it to aggress, but you can also pinpoint it against aggressors.
Yeah, Shane, a lot of people have yelled at me for saying this, but I've actually said on a couple of things, I kind of sometimes wish that Nazi Germany developed the bomb. And people say, well, why would you say that? Because think of it, even if they had a bomb, Nazi Germany stood no chance against winning World War II. They would have lost eventually, but because they would have lost and they used the bomb, nuclear weapons would forever be associated with Nazi tyranny, and therefore a lot more nations would be very, very reluctant to adopt it.
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
I actually pointed up. I actually thought of a short story about that, where a guy from a nuclear ravaged future comes back from time, and he steals a hydrogen bomb from the 1960s. He goes to the scientists that sold the nuclear bombs to the Soviet Union and told them, "Look, I understand you want to bring World War II to an end real quickly. So here's my proposition: you can drop one bomb on Japan, and after that, atomic bombs have to be banned. You have to destroy all of your paper. You can never develop atomic energy for weaponry again. And if they don't comply, he's going to give the bomb to Germany." And you know how my book ends?
Anarcho Rain has an interesting point in the chat room. He said, Nazis invented rockets. Do we not use rockets, or developed rockets anyway? Well, I mean, we even use some of those very same Nazis, like Werner von Braun.
Well, there are use cases for these devices that are not violent.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe
given the use their policies today,
and maybe the argument that they cannot be used in a way that's not aggressive is true, but there are other reasons to have them.
Well, von Braun wasn't. Well, the thing is, von Braun wasn't even really a Nazi. He wanted to build weapons into space. In fact, there's the classic story about how when he was drunk at a party and when he heard that the V2 rocket on London was successful, they asked him, "So what are you proud? Did you accomplish your work?" He says, "Yep, I finally launched a rocket to launch it into the air, and it hit the wrong satellite." Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it was like. He had to join. Everyone had to join the Nazi party. I mean, that's
that wasn't a choice. That was kind of like
Werner von Braun did suggest using Jew slaves to construct the V2, so he wasn't completely innocent.
I don't think anyone was. It's war.
It's
hard to find innocence.
I mean, it's so funny. It's so funny because
all right, see you, Jacob.
Yeah, because I bring this up all the time because I'm part of history buffs and all that. I mean, a lot of people love to portray World War II in movies, especially as like good versus evil. But if you actually sit down and look at it, it wasn't.
Same with the Civil War. The Yanks are on the good side, the Confederates are on the evil side. Both sides were pretty evil.
Yeah, I have to go as well.
Yeah.
All right, see you, Alex.
Yeah. I mean, I will say this, so a lot of people can argue this. A lot of people think that it was good for the Soviet Union to get a hold of the atomic bomb. I think that was a bad idea. And people ask me, well, why? Because it balanced the right of power. Yeah, but here's the thing. You got to remember, the United States and the Soviets didn't like each other, and they had a whole bunch of allies that they were doing. So if they were in theory to go to a Cold War together, the Soviets are going to give nukes to their allies. The Americans are going to do the same thing. And as a consequence, you're going to have an entire planet filled with nuclear weapons. And now, because of that, the idea of nuclear disarmament is slim to none. Whereas if only the United States had nukes, it's much easier for the entire world to zero in on the United States and say, "Hey, U.S., get rid of your bombs. You don't need them." But now, because we have weapons all over the place, I'm sorry to say, I think nuclear disarmament, like complete nuclear disarmament, it's impossible because there's so many nukes everywhere.
Yeah, and that's why I think really the only thing we do is just say, okay, we'll just have it equal capacity. Anyone who wants a nuke should be able to get them, but there are so many nukes around, you'd have to be an idiot to actually use them.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, heck, even North Korea doesn't really use them. Like, a lot of people get scared when North Korea says we're going to launch a missile. Deep down, they would never do it. Even as crazy as they are, they wouldn't do it because
it's posturing. They do it to laugh at us. I mean, I remember when people were, I don't remember if it was Saddam Hussein or, Syria or Iran, somewhere like that. They were saying, they're going to get a nuke. They're going to get a nuke. They're going to get a nuke. And you notice they picked exactly that moment to do a test blast high up in the atmosphere. And it was like North Korea was going, hey, nukes right here. We got them. No, we got to worry about it right over here.
It's pretty funny. It is pretty funny because there were all those people, in California scared to death. They're saying, oh my God, the North Koreans are going to nuke us. When our own CIA has said they barely have any working nuclear weapons, and the ones they do have couldn't even reach Tokyo.
Well, that is a worry, though, because I do worry a bit about that. Because if they do somehow get the means to say accidentally, have it come close to your allies, Japan, South Korea, or say off the coast of Hawaii, that's pretty much an act of war. And,
I say do it because the moment they do that, they're gonna look. The U.S. is going to go, okay, no, we're not dealing with this. You're gone.
And China's going to look bad too because China's like, well, that's North Korea's main ally, and I know people don't like to hear this, but if Trump can somehow, I don't know how he's going to do it, but if he did, convince China to say, "Hey, we'll take out North Korea. We'll give that land for North Korea to you," or something like that, just to deal with this little petulant troll.
That's the only reason China's allied with North Korea. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people like to portray China and North Korea as BFFs, but in real life, the alliance between North Korea and China is kind of like the alliance between Italy and Nazi Germany. Both sides secretly hated each other, but they needed to ally because it was the only option they had.
Yes.
Yeah, if they didn't ally, they destroy each other.
Yeah.
I think everyone views North Korea. It's just that I was just gonna say I think everyone views North Korea as that fat little kid on the park. He was just like, he doesn't want to be fat and ashamed anymore, so he's trying to be all big and tough, and everyone's just like, get out of here.
Yeah.
You're a loser.
And if anyone does... I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, Charles. Well, I was about to say, I mean, China has even came out and said, you know, look, if you have to go to war with North Korea, fine. You know what? We admit they're going crazy. You can do whatever you want under the condition that your military actions do not affect, you know, the lives of China, you know.
China.
Yeah, but
well, they're going to be careful about it because they don't want it to affect even South Koreans because we have important alliances with South Korea.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
you know,
and the world, because Lord knows, heck, they might even attack Russia, and if that happens, well, well, the shit really would hit the fan then. If North Korea does something really out loopy and say, "Oh, we can't reach any of these allies," okay, then we'll hit Russia.
No, where's the profit at any of this?
Yeah, it's
just madmen and insanity. That's pretty much what it is.
That's why you're not going to get war with an anarcho-capitalist society. There's no profit in it.
Yep, and also,
which is why we won't have nukes either. Where's the profit in it?
Well, there's nuclear energy. There is, you know.
Well, that's different. Thorium reactors, for example. I mean, I don't hear anybody talking about thorium.
Yeah, but
guys, can you also let me say something? Another thing is that in a lot of, you know, whole U.S. versus North Korea fictions, a lot of times they love to portray South Korea being completely overwhelmed by North Korea. I had a friend who, well, I haven't spoken to him in a while, but he used to be an ex-U.S. Army Ranger who, in his final days in the Army, was stationed in South Korea, and he actually told this to a person who was coming up with that idea. It's like, dude, have you seen the South Korean Army? I mean, the North Korean army is primitive. They're extremely primitive. I mean, there's video of them still hauling their artillery using mules. Meanwhile, South Korea has all this high-tech equipment. Their navy is on the verge of becoming a blue ocean navy.
So what you're saying is the only way North Korea would stand a chance is if they were actually in Sid Meier's civilization.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah. How many times did I have like this, you know, major... big, you know, destroyer, but there's like one phalanx there and they sink it. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Damn it.
Yeah, it's like
going ooga booga to sink my.
Yeah, it's like, you know, it's sad because the North Koreans love to brag about how they defeated the United States during the Korean War, and I just love to, if I was there, I would have just loved to laugh at them and say, no, you didn't. You got your butts. What happened was that China came in and bailed you guys out.
Well, that's how that's going to disappear. It's going to be a propaganda machine war. I mean,
hell, by 1953, like towards the end of the Korean War, it wasn't even a war between the United States and North Korea. It was a war between the United States and China.
Yeah,
you know,
it was, and the reason why it stopped was because of it was an armistice, right? The
Chinese. The Chinese didn't have the technology to destroy the United States forces, but the United States didn't have the numbers to take out China. And after some people suggested that, you know, maybe we should try nuking China, that's when the president realized, okay, this is going too far. We need to pull the plug on the operation before it gets worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, it's just everyone's like, I got a nuke. I've got a nuke. If you do this, I'll nuke you. And I'm kind of like, do you want Terminator 2 to happen?
Yeah.
But it's always like I say, it's defense. I would say keep nukes around just for defense because you know people aren't going to screw with you if you have nukes. I mean, that's the reason why we're doing all this nice diplomacy with North Korea. Because they have a nuke. If they didn't have a nuke, well, you know, you like Iraq and you see how Iraq and Afghanistan turned out. You know, they didn't have nukes, and I think we would have invaded Pakistan too, but they have nukes too.
And we're the country that spends more of its budget on a water park than anything else. North Korea.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, here's another funny thing about the whole.
Actually, that's probably a better use of government funds than what most governments.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I was about to say this. You know, I mean, another example about how you wouldn't get war in an anarcho-capitalist society and how war isn't profitable. It reminds me about the Fallout universe because in the Fallout universe, the whole nuclear war started because we ran dangerously low on resources. And I was just thinking about that because I read about the whole resource war. It's like, hey, I know a perfect solution that would have been one giant leap in the direction of finding a better alternative resource and preserving the remaining resources you have. You know what that is? Don't go to war. I mean, because that means you have to spend a lot of oil and all that's already delicate getting to the oil-rich nations that are still left over. It's like, what are you politicians thinking?
We need war. We need money.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's like, Seriously, you know, I mean, especially those nuclear missiles. You know, I mean, it's like missiles need oil. Why not just why not just take the uranium out of your missiles and all that? That's actually a major work. That's actually a major plot hole in the Fallout universe, is that they ran out of oil, yet it's established multiple times that they fully harnessed the power of the atom. And I'm just saying, if they could do that, they don't need oil.
Yeah, but don't let Bethesda know that. They'll get triggered.
Well, it's like one of you mentioned thorium earlier. I don't know how many of you realize that, but using molten salt reactors.
Oh, yeah.
With thorium, that's 1940s technology.
Yep, that's right. U.S. government, too.
Yeah, and that's what they were going to do.
They couldn't make weapons, and because Nixon found that it was more expedient in a political sense to give his cronies in California.
It wasn't that. It was because the Navy wanted aircraft reactors, and molten salt reactors use convection for cooling, which doesn't happen when you're going into a dive. So that's why they made all these boiling water and pressurized water designs and things like that, so the Navy could use them in aircraft. And then, you had to use uranium for that, etc. And then the Navy decided, well, we're not going to do that. But by the time they decided that, all the regs were in place, and no one stopped and think, hey, wait a minute, now that we're not doing that, maybe we should go back. No, they just kind of went from there. And
hey, we don't need to worry about it. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the transcripts of Nixon shutting it down.
3 Mile Island didn't need to happen. We could have had molten salt reactors running thorium this whole time.
Of course, I feel weird about that because I live by Nuclear 1, which is like one of the oldest still working nuclear reactors in America.
Oh. I'm about a couple miles away from McGuire, which is a pressurized water reactor. So it's
I have to say this, Shane. I still think it's so hilarious about how a lot of anti-nuclear people love to use 3 Mile Island as an example about why we shouldn't have nuclear energy. Yet, if you thoroughly examine it, it's a perfect example about how safe nuclear reactor is, because the reactor. Yeah, the reactor did not explode. It was successfully contained, and some radiation got out, but you were literally exposed to more radiation during an X-ray exam than you were at 3 Mile Island.
And Fukushima,
thorium is passively safe. So, I mean, if you go to a thorium-based reactor, then you've got no hydrogen in the mix because there's no water for cooling. It's a direct coolant. So you get no hydrogen gas buildup. You don't need a 20-foot thick concrete dome to contain, that volume of steam and hydrogen gas. You'll never have meltdowns. It just won't. It can't happen.
You won't have meltdowns because it'll never get hot enough to actually boil salt. So the boiling level of sodium is just way too high for that.
Yeah. Well,
but if you want to look at Fukushima, the lesson of Fukushima isn't that nuclear power is bad, it's that nuclear hysteria is bad. Because what happened was the nuclear hysteria made them put a system into place that if there was an earthquake, even one that wouldn't have damaged the reactors like the one in Japan didn't, it would still shut down the reactors. When we shut down the reactors, you have to kick in the backup generators to keep the water going through to keep it cool. The tsunami took out the backup generators, and it melted down.
That's another.
Go ahead.
Wasn't there also that incident where everyone was saying, "Oh my God, Fukushima is going to poison the entire Pacific Ocean and all that," but then there was actually a Canadian scientist that did a thorough examination and found out that there was little to no nuclear leakage from the thing, and everyone was safe. Now you'd think everyone would say, "Oh, good, we're all safe," but nope. The environmentalists were outraged. They were angry at him.
Oh yeah, they sent him death threats.
Yeah. Yeah,
well,
that clearly showed
the podcast.
That's why I tell people I don't believe for a second that most environmentalists literally care about the Earth. It's all about their agenda. Because if you were truly cared about the Earth, if you found out that nothing was going to harm the Earth, you'd declare victory and move on. But no, they have an agenda, and they will not stop unless they get that agenda.
I've said it many times. If you're against nuclear power, I don't want to hear one word you have to say about global warming.
I mean, seriously, I've met some environmentalists that think that the best ultimate way just to save Mother Earth and humanity is that we got to devolve, quote unquote, devolve and go back to the caveman era.
Yeah, they're anti-humanists.
But here's something, a new sport, which I honestly think you should be on your show, Shane, like your little Bogacity thing. I just found this thing out. Former U.S. Representative Corny Brown convicted of stealing from phony charity. And guess
stealing
what?
From a phony charity?
No. This is what.
So he stole funds that didn't exist from a charity. That
She was found guilty of siphoning hundreds of thousands of dollars for a charity that she and her chief of staff has passed off as a scholarship for students. And guess which political party she's in? Let's guess.
Democrat.
The Rhinoceros Party.
There it is.
I got a 50-50 chance, so maybe I'll just guess one.
Yeah.
Obviously, it was the Bull Moose Party.
There you go.
But it's not surprising, but yet it's just so interesting that she was saying this. She was trying to raise money for, I think it was for like poor students, probably mostly black students, but yet in the end she pocketed most of the cash, and most of the people around her pocketed the cash. And I'm like, yeah, but you know what? Yeah. It's not surprising. And shout out to Thought Crime, Raw Dog Buffalo on Twitter, who put that out there. And he's like, it's like this right after we tweet next. So a former U.S. rep, Corinne Brown, was stealing from scholarship for poor blacks that she was raising that didn't exist. Typical Democrat. If former U.S. rep Corinne Brown were right and Republican, it would be all over the news. And sadly, that is true. And I don't want to say that because I'd be just, it will get to the whole protection of, the Republicans are innocent. They don't do that. No, the Republicans are just as dirty. And I can probably list a lot of controversies and scandals on the Republican side. And, if you want to point that out, that's your right to do so, and you should. But when the Democrats doing all the shady type of stuff, the stuff that barely gets, like, things are just really disturbing, they barely get mentioned. They barely get talked about.
Charlie, put the link for that in the forum, and I'll put it on the list for next week.
And of course, the media, and I've seen this so many times, the media still won't shut up about the whole Russian controversy, even though it's been debunked how many times?
Russia. This is like Trump's going to get us at war with Russia. Trump's still in bed with Russia. Those two things are apparently now true at the same time since he fired Comey, because don't you know that's the reason he fired Comey? Even though the Democrats wanted him to fire Comey.
I had an interesting experience while I was delivering pizza. I was delivering pizza to a hospital, and as I was waiting for the person who actually ordered to come pick it up, then the receptionist, who I reported to, who called the person who ordered it, were talking politics, and they were criticizing Trump, and they were talking about how they supported Bernie, and they were talking about healthcare and all that, and they were like, why can't there just be one payer system? It'll make our job so much easier instead of having to file all this insurance. And I didn't say anything because I was on the job and I didn't want to get in trouble. I'm just thinking, ladies, you have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes, the system you've been talking about it's tried, and you know what it usually ends up resulting in? You either get a poor quality hospital or you have a really good quality hospital, but you got to wait 6 months to a year to get in it.
Well, and it's like you're talking about paperwork, the big laughing stock over in the UK is how much paperwork is involved with the NHS.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I see so many people defending the NHS, and I'm just like, okay, let me ask you this then. If your NHS is so perfect, how come every year or so there's always a big talk about it, and they're talking about how, okay, we need to fix the NHS. Why is the NHS not working effectively? What's going on with the NHS? It's like, if it's so perfect, you wouldn't be having this.
By the way, we've got another NHS story coming up on the podcast next week, and it will boil your blood.
And speaking of which, but there's all this good stuff. Is out, what everyone's talking about, the healthcare and everything else, but they don't talk about the waiting times and the waiting list. They never seem to talk about that and the stories I look and see, the Canadian wait times. It's one of the biggest issues facing Canada right now.
Yeah, no, people are dying waiting to get transplants.
I will say this. I will give Bernie Sanders some kudos. At least he tried to justify rationing. Granted it was about bread lines, but I'm pretty sure you could easily apply it to some people about Medicare. He says, well, waiting lines are good because it makes sure that the resources are distributed equally.
It equalizes access. Yep, that's what they say up in Canada.
Yep. Yeah, that's another funny thing that I was laughing about because they were saying, oh yeah, I was a Bernie Sanders way ahead of time, and I'm like, oh, so you supported the same guy who thought that Venezuela was the ideal model that everyone should start copying.
Whoopsie. But yeah, here
Except
it is.
now it's not real socialism all of a sudden.
Yeah, but it's interesting that the longest wait time for, like, say, New Brunswick in Canada is 38.8 weeks. And the one thing it is, the wait times for, like, say, neurosurgery, 46.9 weeks. Orthopedic surgery, 38 weeks. Say plastic surgery, 25.9 weeks. It's like, what in the world? Supposedly they're so, you know what I mean, right? If it's so good, why are these wait times? And honestly, it's gonna get. And if you have these issues, what's gonna happen with American when that thing gets, heck, remember when the ACA was rolled out and the websites were crashing? And I remember me and I think Laura Hawkeye, we actually, we did that podcast. I just kept saying $400 million wasted.
Yep. Oh yeah. And not to mention the government didn't file a proper, domain page on it, and as a result, there were a lot of people saying, okay, go to healthcare.gov to get your free healthcare, but it turns out it was a phishing website.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, I tell this to people all the time, I mean, don't get me wrong, the U.S. system sucks ass, but it's not, but a single payer system is not that, I mean, I don't know if it's a catch-22 or Morton's fork, but it's like, there's all these people saying it sucks, it's so expensive and bureaucratic to get medicine. Okay, then we libertarians are proposing the idea that will get rid of all that bureaucracy and expense, and they're like, no, but then we're going to be flooded with bad drugs, and companies are going to jack up the prices to make a buck. It's like, well, what do you want then? Yeah.
You get one or the other, not both.
Yeah, it's like.
And honestly, everyone's going crazy right now with Trump finally called me, and I'm like, the same liberals who are like, oh, they should fire, and then next he gets fired, and everyone's
why'd you fire him?
Because he was just about to uncover all the evidence that would prove that Trump's in bed with Putin.
He wasn't. Yeah, and the funny thing is that he even wasn't. Connolly himself said, I haven't found evidence yet, but if you give me more money, I'll find it. It's like, that's why he was fired.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Don't let facts get in the way of good political theater.
It's that classic example. It's that classic example we use all the time. We always use, we have to bail so and so out, or else we're gonna all be doomed. Wait a minute, we did it and it didn't work. Well, that's because we didn't work hard enough.
I'm just kind of like,
something like that just happened with, I think, the CEO of AIG or something like that. That they basically said that he couldn't sue the government for the bailouts, because he didn't have standing or whatever.
Yeah, and it's
you can go ahead. I was just gonna say, I'm just glad I'm libertarian, that way I don't have to deal with this.
I'm just saying it's just getting ridiculous. There
needs to be a culling. People are getting too stupid.
Yeah, a lot of people are always complaining about how people are getting stupider each generation. Well, you know what? I think that is true, but that's because of the government.
It's actually not true. Look up the Flynn effect. People are getting smarter.
Yeah, but I think there's. Yeah, again, everyone likes to look at idiocracy, but I don't think it's a real interesting type of way. Oh, that's how it's really is. It seems to be an elitist type of thing.
I don't know.
I was also talking to some friends of mine about this. Some people will say I blame the government too much, but I largely blame them for the reason why partially my life sucks so much is because, a lot of the good jobs, you got to get a college education. Well, I did some research and I said that not too long ago, most jobs that are on the market, you didn't need to get a college education to get them. It wasn't until the government started subsidizing colleges that a lot of businesses were pressured to say, you got to start accepting college applicants,
Yeah, but even at that, you go through that, you go to college and you have, $150,000 in student loans. You basically have a homeowner's loan and no home. Now you've got these student loans you have to pay off, and the extra money you're going to get because of this job that you couldn't get without the college degree, it's not enough to cover what you have to pay on the student loan.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I just got my grades in and I just got officially I have passed both my classes. So
yay!
Yeah. And I'm
Bravo.
I'm going to say this to the government. It's also the reason why a lot of people I've actually heard is it's a lot of reason why college is often really too hard. Because, I mean, one thing I never understood about school, especially in terms of things like homework, is that they say, well, we're trying to prepare you for the real life. And I'm like, now, there's some exceptions. There are jobs out there where you do take work home. But most jobs, if I recall correctly, you don't have homework. You know, once you do your job, you punch out, you say, okay, goodbye, boss, see you tomorrow, and that's it.
Well,
and
in
what
what
they're
times
having you
everyone's
do
segregated
is
by
nothing
age?
you're actually going to do in the real world anyway.
yes,
Yeah, you know.
there are pointless classes. And
Like gender studies.
oh yes, and
I mean,
nutrition.
math is-
Even just in like middle school or high school.
oh
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, math is really fun, but I've actually met an actual math teacher on a forum who flat out said, that as much as interesting as math is, unless you're going to be like an architect or like a civil engineer, 90% of the stuff they teach in math, you're never going to need. In fact, you're going to forget about it the moment you graduate.
You're going to learn the math you need to learn while you're doing your job. That's how it works.
Yeah, that's how it.
The problem with the younger generations is they're too focused on going into 4-year education programs where you don't really need to have a bachelor's degree. Like I went to school. I decided it wasn't for me. I decided to do trade school, and I became a blacksmith, and that's what I do for a living, and that's what I enjoy. I think people should focus more on trade schools and get into the tools of trade because what are you gonna, you go to a 4-year degree. Let's say you're stupid and you get a degree in gender studies. That pays a lot less than what you think it was, and you just spent 4 years of your life studying for it, and it's pointless. And you could just gone to a 2-year school and gotten a trade and made more money.
Or you could have gone online.
Yeah,
or you could have gone to practice.
And that's another thing that people fail to realize, and it goes back to the whole who will do this and all, who will build the roads argument. It's like there's like so many people that think that college is an absolute necessity in society, and people say, but if all the colleges were to disappear, who is going to train doctors and lawyers and all that? It's like, well, you know how doctors became doctors before medical schools were
apprenticeships.
Open? They went to a local guy who knew what he was doing, and they said, hey, I really like helping make people better. Can you teach me what you know about doctoring? And that's what they did.
Apprenticeship in America has basically died.
Oh, hello there.
Oh, Steve Buscemi's here. Steve Buscemi's
Daniel,
here.
your mic levels are clipped, so cut down your levels.
Yes. Okay. While he's doing his little mic levels thing, the one thing is about the schools and everything like that. If you've ever watched that guy T, I think his videos like "So Why School Sucks" basically lines it up perfectly. He just says that he was really interested in school, but he had to learn all this stupid stuff, and he's like, I didn't care. I was just beaten down. I didn't care for it. If I was like, say, for who wants to learn about, getting like, say, for example, he made an example. He wanted to be like, being a what's the person good with numbers?
Mathematician.
No, not mathematician. No, accountant. Yes, accountant, tax accountant, whatever. He wants to be that. But why is he learning like this, that, and the other that are unnecessary and such?
Yeah.
And sports. You look at, say, sports, though. Sports, you have like a clear pathway to do that type of stuff. What's connected to that? Why can't we have that for education? What other educations?
Well, it's the Prussian system. It's all about control and indoctrination.
Yep.
It's not about actually learning
and as Evan just pointed out in the chat room, it's the Prussian model for industrialization, but we're in a post-industrial economy.
And I will say this, a perfect example about how schools just, because, I'm a smart guy and, the schools, and, but I barely passed school, not because I was stupid. It was just because I got so overwhelmed by all the homework and all the useless stuff that I just said, you know what, screw it, and a perfect example of this would be my novel class. Now, I had a nice teacher, and I will admit there was some cool stuff in there, but I will say this. Other than Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, almost every single book we read in that class was horrible. It was boring.
Well,
Lord of the Flies. I think it was Pride and Prejudice and all that. And I'm like, these books are so boring.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Oh yeah.
Yes, we can hear you, and we can see the top of your head very well.
Yeah. I don't know how to turn that off.
I will say the most classic example of school somewhat lying to me had to be when we read The Great Gatsby for American literature, and like my teachers were like amping it up. They were telling the story about F. Scott Fitzgerald. We watched the movie and all the stuff behind it and the cultural references. We finally sat down and read the book, and I fell asleep every time I tried to read a chapter.
Boring.
It's boring.
And I always felt that way about Hemingway. I could never make it through Hemingway.
But I guarantee
the only Hemingway story I made it through was
All right.
Hemingway's okay. He's got some good works out there, but
yeah, but it's, I think Bill Maher said, well, school has to be boring because boring means that you're learning something. I'm like,
no,
that's when you're not learning something.
Yeah, I know from first-hand experience, when you're bored, you're not learning, you're falling asleep, and your brain's just saying, yeah, whatever, like if your brain had like little people working it, they say, what are we going to do with this information? Whatever, just put it wherever. And then in the future, when you need it, your brain's going to be like, okay, where's that information we needed? I don't know. You told me to stuff it somewhere.
Out his name.
I tell everybody my brain is like a shot glass, and every day I pour a gallon of information into it. Something is bound to spill.
What am I thinking in the movie?
Yeah, it's
all of a sudden.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, it's
like
I
can turn off your camera if you want me to.
Oh yes, please, thank you.
Usually I can
find the button, but now I can't for some reason.
Actually, Christina Hoff Summers did a really good video about this. She was talking about how boys were having a lower literacy rate than girls were, and this was causing some people to say, well, I guess it just shows that girls, are more mature and can read better. But Christina Hoff Summers pointed out, no, the reason why boys aren't showing an interest in reading in schools is because teachers are picking the most inappropriate books for them to read. They're making boys read books like Pride and Prejudice or Little House on the Prairie, and it's been statistically showed that guys like reading, they just don't like reading about that stuff,
Yeah.
Just read Tolkien. Guys like Tolkien.
Yep.
They want to read. They want to read Lord of the. They
want
to read.
Daniel, apparently I can't load the app to do it, so sorry.
Oh, sorry.
But boys, they want to read books like All Quiet on the Western Front, Lord of the Rings. Some of the sci-fi novels. The problem is that a lot of those books are considered not school appropriate.
Yeah, because they're too libertarian. They're not going to have you read The Moon is a Harsh Mistress.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
God forbid you might think.
They're going to make you read Catcher in the Rye and all that. I fell asleep through Catcher in the Rye, I'll be honest.
Well,
yeah. It's pretty funny because so many people like to claim that Catcher in the Rye is the biggest book ever, but I think South Park put it best. All that book is about is a 16-year-old teenager whining about how much his life sucks.
Yeah, no.
By the way, hey.
And you talked about Lord of the Flies earlier. I mean, that's pretty much everyone's idea of why we need a government, because we can't have the Lord of the Flies scenario, but the Lord of the Flies scenario is not the way it pans out in the real world.
We're going to crash land on an island and have a bunch of kids,
Not to mention, if anything, it's a perfect example about why we shouldn't have religion, because why does the shit hit the fan in Lord of the Flies? Because some kid thinks he sees a monster and everyone says, oh yeah, unless we do this stuff, the monster's going to come and kill us all.
Yeah.
Oh, Shane, do you mind if I invite some folks from the Great Hall over to here?
That's okay. How many people we got in? We got in 6. If it gets too full, I'm going to ask a couple of people to drop out in case there are any patrons who want to join in. But
I'm about to head out myself because I got to eat dinner and get ready for my little podcast.
Yeah, I got less than half an hour myself, so yeah, you can have a couple of them in.
All right, I'll talk y'all guys later.
I think you're going to have Sam in here before.
All right, well.
Okay, see ya, Charles.
See ya. Bye, everybody.
Oh, I didn't. In all honesty. Yeah. In all honesty, I didn't really like Lord of the Flies, to be honest. Like, I wouldn't say it was a bad book. It's just that after I was done reading it, I'm like, why is this book considered historically significant? It's like I just didn't know what to think about. I mean, our teacher kept saying Lord of the Flies was a very important book that influenced so many stuff, and I'm just reading it thinking, how? It's about a bunch of boys that are stranded on an island and they slowly go crazy. It's like, that idea's been done to death before,
That's kind of how I felt about Moby Dick because of what we were taught when we read it about how, yeah. But I mean, it's like the way I felt about Ahab was not the way my teacher said to feel about Ahab. It's like Ahab is stupid. I mean, he's one of the dumbest guys on the planet, and it wasn't until I was older
get that whale.
figured out that that's actually kind of Melville's point.
Yeah, that's actually the point that a lot of people miss. That they miss is that a lot of people love to portray Captain Ahab as like this guy who used to be good, but then he went crazy for whatever reason. No, if I recall correctly, the book states that Ahab is a down on his luck whaler. He's on the verge of going bankrupt, and one of the reasons is because he's so narrow-minded and so stupid, and he goes to these great lengths to find that one whale because he thinks it'll like make him rich or something. And it's like, you can hunt these other whales, and yeah, they don't fetch as much money, but you're still making money.
Well, the whale took his leg, and so he's out for revenge and all that.
Revenge! Yeah.
Yeah, that's what Starbuck kept saying. It's like, look, we can just grab a couple of whales and go home and see our families.
Yeah.
No, we need to get this one whale.
Yeah.
And he almost has Ahab convinced, and Ahab's almost like, yeah, I could see my wife and son get down, be good. Oh, there's the whale. Let's go get
it.
You son of a bitch! You took my leg.
Yeah, it's like
I can't spit in that.
To the last I grapple with thee.
Yep. Yeah. For hate's sake, I stabbeth thee.
I spit my last breath at thee.
Yeah, that's.
You mean we've been out here for months? With
3
no
years.
anything for a stupid whale.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I will say one funny parody I loved about Moby Dick was when SpongeBob parodied it in their episode Clams.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and Mr. Krabs just goes completely nuts, and it's like, especially the scene where he throws out all the food, and I'm just thinking, Mr. Krabs, I know you want to track down the clam and all that, but, that could take weeks, months, possibly years, and you just got rid of the entire food. You realize your crew's gonna starve to death in a few days by doing that. It's like, what are you thinking? Yeah.
But my roads.
Yeah, it's like, and all over just $1.
Yeah.
Yeah, $1, and they even try to give him a real dollar, but he's like, "This isn't me millionth dollar. This is an ordinary dollar that's been crumbled up, tore slightly, dipped in the lagoon, and kissed with coral blue No. 2 semi-gloss lips."
Shades of Trading Places. There, the bet's $1.
The thing is, where did they get the lipstick?
That was a great movie, Trading Places.
Did one of them just have the lipstick on hand, or?
Yeah, they did, because that's how they got blown away, was because SpongeBob goes, actually, it's Coral Blue No. 3.
It's SpongeBob. Don't ask too many questions.
Hey, like 2005 back, SpongeBob actually had some pretty funny jokes.
But yeah, the first couple of seasons were good. Stephen Hillenburg left, and the seasons after that were okay, but now they've just become stupid.
They've gotten kind of gross, actually, from what I've seen.
They've either become really, really gross or really, really cringeworthy.
So sort of like Ren and Stimpy after they canned Chris Falusi.
Stimpy, you idiot.
Yeah. And then they tried adult party cartoon, which didn't work out because the creators failed to realize you need more than just gross jokes and sex innuendos to be adult humor,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I think a good show that shows like the transition from a children's to an adult that actually worked was actually the new season of Samurai Jack. That actually worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
I remember like the transition from C-Lab 2020 to C-Lab 2021.
I only saw
we
like the
have
first couple
Shepherd
episodes.
Dog. Is this a patron or is this someone from Daniel's group?
This is someone from the Great Hall.
Okay.
Oh.
I'm surprised you don't remember him. You had a run-in with him a while before.
I think I've seen his YouTube channel before. I recognize the avatar.
Must not have been that memorable.
You banned him for flooding.
Oh.
Must not have been that memorable. You banned him. Oh.
Well, that happens when you start posting one thing after another. It's like, no.
Yeah. There's been...
It's in the rules, people.
Yeah,
the hierarchy. No, I'm only kidding.
But there are no rules in an ANCAP society.
Let's...
No. In an ANCAP society, there's no rulers.
Yeah.
Me and Tim have pointed it out very time. And
it's property rights.
Yeah, no, it's a joke.
In an ANCAP society, there's no rule saying that the society can't explode.
That's like, I'm a mod in DAP's Discord, and it's can't because like, why are there mods in this Discord? It's supposed to be end cap.
Actually, the sun can explode. It's too small.
That's true.
Yeah, it's too small. You know?
And there was the thing like people, always ask, how much water would it take to put out the sun? Well, the answer is the sun's not on fire. It's chemical fusion, and if you sprayed a lot of water on the sun, you just increase its mass, make it burn hotter.
Everybody knows that it's a giant lump of coal.
Oh, Shane,
yeah.
You know if Incom's going to be able to make it in here? Because I couldn't invite him. I couldn't figure out how to invite him.
Okay, Shane, I want to know who asked that question, because that's a stupid question.
It's a question kids ask because they think of the sun as being.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you were like a 30-year-old asked that question.
No. But the answer is so fascinating. If the water would actually make it burn hotter, they're increasing its mass.
Yeah, here's another thing that a lot of people get wrong. Why does water put out fire in its most common form? And a lot of people said, because fire's hot and water's cold. No, it's about the oxygen.
Yep.
My brain cells just deteriorated from that.
Yeah.
I now have an IQ.
Well, it's kind of both actually, because like if you had something that was on fire and you set it in water without submersing it, you get all the steam, and the steam would take heat away and eventually put it out.
By the way, nice to meet you, Chris and George.
Howdy.
Sorry.
Hi, diddly ho, neighborino.
Yeah, but going back to science and all that, here's another funny thing that people actually also don't recognize in science, that physics-wise, there's no such thing as quote-unquote cold. It's only there's either heat or there isn't heat.
Yeah.
Well, there's just energy levels in the kinetic energy of the molecules.
like for instance, if you got a warm, toasty house and it's winter outside and you leave the door open and people say, "Hey, you're letting the cold in," that's actually not true. You're letting the heat out.
Yeah.
Right, it's a light and dark.
This is 10th grade science, but people forget it. I don't know why.
Oh, by the way, if too many people are going to come into the chat, are we going to, if they're going to overbook, are we going to call the police to beat the crap out of them?
He's got a gun.
Yeah.
I just want to leave at least one slot open for any patrons that want to come in, because this is ultimately for them.
It's pretty funny because everyone's blaming that whole airline incident on capitalism. It's like, well, the reason why the planes systems do the way they do is because they're overly regulated by the national what's it called, the government bureau that regulates the air traffic ways and all that.
FAA.
FCC.
The FAA.
Waves. You said I was.
Yeah,
Airplanes in the air, not radio waves.
Rock and roll.
Yeah. And it's I think the reason why that particular incident was all that because I understand why some planes overbook because sometimes they have to do it, but I think the problem was that they handled it so inappropriately. It's like,
well, and they weren't even making room for other passengers. It was their own crew people. People didn't like that aspect.
Yeah, it was their own crew people. It's like, oh, we got to get these crew to this other airplace. It's like, well, is it a dire emergency? Well, no. Well, then can't they just wait for a plane that's not as booked? And actually, John Stossel did a whole expose, and one problem in why air traffic in the United States is so difficult is actually because the air is actually, ironically, is because the airline is so busy. It's because the airplane companies insist on having all these flights in one row that there's no time to get all the necessary precautions, and as a result, stuff gets backed up, and then you have that whole incident, where you're stuck on a runway and you're stuck with a full bladder, you're starving to death, but you can't get up to do anything because, you're on an active runway, so you're stuck behind. It's like, well, when are we in flight to take off? About 3 hours, but we're the third flight. There actually was an incident where a guy actually soiled himself because he couldn't go to the bathroom, and he told people over the time, "I'm about to explode. Can I please get up and go to the bathroom?" They said, "No, you're on an active runway." It's like, but we're the third in line, and it's going to be several hours before we take off. Why do they have that stupid rule? It's like something tells me the NFA or whatever told them to do that, or whatever.
Well, it's
it kind of makes you think, because if you've ever read the short story The Cold Equation, it's about how you can't make any exceptions for the laws of physics, like you can, if any human being had made that law, then of course they'd make an exception for, a young girl who didn't know any better. And yet you have cases like that where they could easily make the exception and they just don't.
Yeah, I mean, heck, South Park, made fun of that all the time, where they're going on the where the souls are on the plane to the afterlife, but because Michael Jackson doesn't want to acknowledge he's dead, the flight's delayed, and like all these people like, come on, man, I'm thirsty, I'm dying of thirst here. Yeah, and I gotta go to the bathroom real bad. Sorry, but we are on an active runway, so we can't do anything. It's like, I mean, versus in Canada, versus in Canada where you don't have any of that problems. And there's a huge reason why, because in Canada, the aircraft aren't regulated by the, I still forget their names, but they're not regulated by the government. And as a result, they actually have to please their customers or risk going out of business.
Oh, planes must be.
Yeah, their air traffic towers are like state of the art.
Yeah. Yeah, their radar, one reason why planes often get delayed is because believe it or not, a lot of our government radars, guess what? They're using old vacuum tube radar. It's like...
There's nothing wrong with
moving bits of paper around at a time when, in Canada, they were just communicating electronically in an instant.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and I mean, And I mean, another problem is that the government often insists on having all these airports closed. There was actually an incident I learned about where when some of Canada's, airlines got privatized, the private company took a look at this one airfield and they asked, well, how do you think we can improve it? And they said, it's so obsolete. There's nothing we can do. It's much cheaper in the long run. Just blow it up and build a new one. That's what they did.
Oh, hey, do you mind if I create a link for Ancom specifically to join? I can't figure out how to add him. He's or is it already overbooked? Because I can always ask.
Turn your meter, by the way. There you go.
Just give him the link. Yeah.
Because I can always ask Shepard to leave if.
No, that's fine. We still have plenty of slots. I think 10 is the most amount you can add. So.
Well, judging by what Shane said, this Hangout's probably gonna be done in like 15-20 minutes. So
I got like 10 minutes and then I got to get out of here.
Have you guys ever considered using a mumble or something like that? I mean, I don't know how many people you can get in a mumble, but it's a lot.
I don't know. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
I'll send you some info.
Yeah.
Oh, please do. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's good to talk about just random random stuff that often doesn't pertain to what Bogosity podcast does,
Yeah, the problem is when you get a bit of silence like this, no one knows what to say. So we got to think of another topic now.
How do you guys find? Do you guys find it difficult to find like-minded folks local to you?
It's weird. It just kind of happens. I don't really,
I don't really leave this cave. I work for myself. I'm a software developer, and I kind of live in my basement all the time and don't see the light of day. And when I do, my skin kind of recoils. But no, seriously though, I mean, it's very difficult to find like-minded people.
I don't tend to
look because I have like the the Libertarian bumper stickers on my car, and people come up to me, "Oh, you're a Libertarian. I am too." And it's like, wow,
interesting.
there are a lot of us around.
I've seen a few Gary Johnson tags around here.
Yeah, it's just that mostly there's just there's that random person going into Walmart there. What are they like? Are they Democrat, Republican, or Libertarian? Are they Catholic, Methodist, atheist, whatever? You don't know. It's just a random person going into Walmart.
In my experience, a lot of people in Green Bay, we tend to be more like, I wouldn't say we're libertarian, but the general attitude I get from a lot of people in Green Bay is they really just don't give a crap about the government anymore, and they do universally agree. I think our lives would be a lot better if the government would just leave us alone.
Oh, so you're a cheesehead.
And I think one of the reasons why that happened is because we had the whole recall Scott Walker thing, and I think after all that, a lot of people are just like, you know what? We're sick of this. We're sick of seeing all these political ads saying, "Oh, you got to support Scott Walker. No, you got to hate him," and all that. We're like, you know what?
It's just like the
Screw
recent
that.
presidential, like. Oh, suddenly the rules of the institution you loved so much don't apply because someone you don't like is in office.
One of the ways I knew Heather was a keeper was when she said, "Shane, I know you're into politics, but really, I'm not, and I don't really see why we need a government at all." I'm like, keeper.
Ta-da.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, there's a big difference though between people who are just convinced that the government isn't doing any good for them, and realizing that, hey, we can actually do substantially better without.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of my coworkers are like that. I mean, I wouldn't say they're libertarians or pro-capitalist or anything, but they do agree. I mean, 90% of our problems are caused because the government, just wants to enforce too many rules.
But then who would take care of us?
Didn't realize it. I remember when Nick Offerman was talking about when he was cast as Ron Swanson, and they said, "Well, your character's a libertarian," and he said, "Well, what's a libertarian?" And I forget how he said they described it. It was actually a pretty good description, libertarian. And he said, "You mean there's a word for people like me?"
That's got to be one of my favorite characters ever. I love his character. He's awesome.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, I mean, I mean, I haven't written anything in a while, but I just like writing short stories that often, portray the government in a dark light. I mean, a lot of my people, some of my peers do say, you kind of sound like one of those, conspiracy nutcases, like, and all that, because you're always mistrusting the government. And I'm like, well, because here's the thing, I mean, you're claiming that I'm living under a rock. In all honesty, if you can watch the news and all that and still trust the government, I think you're the one living under a rock,
Yeah,
that's actually another thing with those ladies and all that. They were talking about how oh yeah, Trump's gonna start World War III. He's just gonna drop the bomb at one point. And I just wanted to ask her, oh yeah, because when Hillary said we need to have troops and planes over Syria, even though our top military experts say this will cause a war with Russia, and she said, I don't care.
My mother's the exact same way, saying, "Oh, I'm so worried for this country. I'm so scared for this country. I don't want to say. I know I sound terrible for saying this, but I hope he gets assassinated."
Yeah.
If he gets assassinated, Pence becomes president. Think it through, people.
Yeah, there was
gay Pence.
Will happen if something.
Hey, Daniel, can I say this? There was actually, I forgot what the title of it. There was a movie, an alternate history movie novel, and it was poking fun of all the people saying, if someone put a bullet hole through George W. Bush's head, this country would be a much better place. Well, in this alternate universe thing, if Bush is assassinated, Dick Cheney takes over, and he makes everything 10 times worse.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's
so
like,
much worse.
What do these people think will happen if the guy they don't like is assassinated?
Yeah,
it'll be better.
That's actually the reason why the Allies didn't assassinate Adolf Hitler, because there actually was a plan. The British had this calculated attempt to drop some paratroopers disguised as German troops, and they were going to snipe him from his Austrian, escape house. But then when Dwight D. Eisenhower took over, he looked over at all the intelligence, and they said, you know what? I think Hitler, in a bizarre way, is our greatest ally, because he doesn't know a lot about military combat, and he's making the German army do a lot of stupid decisions. If we kill him, he'll get replaced by someone who does know what they're doing, and that'll make the war a lot more difficult for us.
Yeah, and that was the thing. Like, one of the things you do in war is you cut off communication so they can't get orders. They found that when they did that with the Nazis, they started fighting better because the generals and commanders actually knew what they were doing in fighting a war. And so if you cut off communication, that just meant they weren't getting all these crazy orders from Berlin.
Yeah, I mean, heck, a lot of military historians that actually look at it, many people do agree Germany would have easily won the Battle of Stalingrad, but why did they lose? Because even though the supplies for the Sixth Army were dwindling, they sent a telegram to Hitler saying, hey, look, we've got most of the city, but if we're going to hold it, we need better equipment, not just for our men, but for the guys covering our flanks. And how did Hitler reply? He said, nope, you're going to fight to the last man.
Yeah.
And by that point, And by that point, there was nothing they could do. I mean, there's an old saying. War isn't won by whoever makes the best decisions. It's won by whoever makes the fewest mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Was that a syphilis thing? I mean, was his brain just sponge by that point?
We think a lot of people think it was a combination. He had Parkinson's, he had syphilis, he was a meth addict. He just. Not to mention, a lot of his close advisors themselves had little to no idea how to run a war. So as a result, Hitler's a classic example of a guy where he can talk, but once he's in power, he doesn't know what to do with it.
Like Obama.
Yeah.
Or Trump.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. In all honesty, one reason why I kind of wanted Trump to win the election is because, and I told this to some people, is because I think that Trump, he'll be one of those presidents where he'll just be so bad at his job that a lot of people will say, you know what, let's not just have another election, let's just forget it, whereas, a lot of people, South Park even made this argument, well, Clinton knows what she's doing, and I was saying, that's why I didn't vote for her.
Yeah.
Yeah. She knows what she wants. She knows what she can do. She knows what her powers are. And when she gets into power, she's going to exploit those powers. Trump, I'll give him kudos. He doesn't know what he's doing. And that's what
I'm laughing. I'm laughing at Al Bookshi in the live chat saying, comparing Hitler to Trump again.
No, I'm not. Yeah.
He's kidding. He did the little tongue sticking out smiley.
Yeah, I know. But
Hillary knows what she's doing. Trump doesn't. That's what makes.
Yeah, that's what I told people. I told people, I honestly think a Trump presidency will be mostly inactive because Trump, will be in the White House giving all these orders, but no one's going to take him seriously, and as a result, nothing's going to get done. And it's been shown throughout history that when the government doesn't.
He's fairly universally opposed by both Democrats and Republicans, so he'll face.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Some of the biggest, prosperity points in American history were when either the government didn't do anything or something caused it to not get involved or anything. A lot of people think that the worst president we ever had was President Harding and people say he didn't do anything. Well, guess what? Harding and to a certain extent the Coolidge administration, that was a pretty darn good time for America.
Yeah, and the 21 depression could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, people love to point out. Oh no, the Great Depression turned out the way, and why the free market didn't work was because the 1929 stock market crash was worse than normal. The one in 1921 was far more worse than the one in 1929.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and the reason why we recovered was because Harding didn't do anything about it.
And the reason why he didn't do anything about it wasn't that he was some kind of principled libertarian. They just couldn't agree on what to do, and the works got gummed up. His Secretary of State, I believe it was Herbert Hoover, and Hoover was saying, "Oh, we should have Social Security, and we shall have all these other that they ended up passing."
Yeah, a lot of people credit Roosevelt for that, but.
Yep, it was Hoover. Yep.
Hoover got the ball rolling on it. Roosevelt actually ran on a platform of a free market, complaining about Hoover's, getting his hands all through the economy.
Yeah, and here's another funny thing about Harding. I once saw a funny joke about President Harding, and there's like a dragon character who's been alive for hundreds of years, and he still gets freaked out about the teapot don't scandal. And one person's like, okay, so how is leasing an oil reserve to a private company that the Navy never uses a scandal?
I've got 2 or 3 minutes, so everyone get your parting shots out.
Baba booey, baba booey.
It was a pleasure meeting you guys. I hope to.
Nobody says that anymore.
That's good. Hopefully, we'll be able to do more of these. It depends on real life keeps happening. So I'm sorry.
I'll tell you what.
Anything you want to say, Sean?
I just want to say I think it will be funny if Trump gets one more bankruptcy under his belt, because everything will be broken down so he can rebuild from the ground up.
Okay. I don't know. What is it? 4 bankruptcies out of how many businesses he's run? I don't know.
Yeah, I love that. Everyone loves to say Trump is a terrible businessman because so-and-so casino, went bankrupt. And I just want to say Trump has a massive empire all over the world and all these businesses, Of course he's going to...
That was him cutting and running from Atlantic City because he saw it going down.
Yeah,
I don't know. Politics for me is kind of like sports. I don't like either of them.
Yeah.
Yay! Al-Bookshi just posted in the chat that he just had his interview and he's hired, and now he's working on his thesis. So congrats, Ibrahim.
Hey!
Yeah.
Good for Ibrahim.
All right, I gotta go. Thanks to everyone. Thanks always to my co-hosts for keep doing what they do, and thanks to my patrons for all their continued support.
It was fun, even though I only managed to make it in late in the thing.
Yeah, you're like Daniel. You're like the United States in World War I.
Thanks, guys. It's always fun to listen to.
Yeah. Although the funny irony is that Although
You as
the
well.
funny irony, just real quickly, a lot of people like to mock America for being in on the final month of the war, but actually, our involvement is the reason why the war ended in 1918. And we not.
Well, no, it would have ended then anyway. It was just both sides were war weary. They were ready for a resolution, but the U.S. ended it definitively, and that's how you get the Treaty of Versailles.
Yeah. Yep. And we only got involved because the British lied and tricked us into getting involved.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
All right.
See you guys.
We can go into all the details in the next hangout, but I really got to get going. I got kids to get in bed, so thanks again, everyone.
Yep. And if they misbehave, Shane, remember, take them to the naughty stool and put them in timeout for 1 minute per their birth year.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind.
Peaceful parenting.
I have mixed feelings about Super Nanny.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, everyone.